left, y'all. Oh man, listen, I have been sick. I'm still sick out here. I just want to give you guys a quick little view. This is my home in Connecticut here. I never get to show you guys this downtown portion right here, which is literally steps away from me. So I figured I'd show y'all a little bit of where I live, all that stuff or whatever, while I get into the topic here. And the topic is this: love. Now I know I don't usually talk about stuff like this or whatever, but I said, you know what, I'm gonna give it a chance, I'm gonna give it a run. So let me talk about this stuff real quick, because it's something for me that rings an ear for me. You see, in 2022, and as we're headed into 2023, I hear all these discussions online, right? About people falling in love, the lack of therefore of love, people not being able to find solid relationships, etc., 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 right? And all this is conditioned based off the fact that the current dating market, with a lot of women, and I would say realistically, a lot of men would find unusual, especially here where I live at. Now, the dating ratio here where I live at, it's not bad at all. It's really good. You can find some narcissism in anybody that you date, whether it be male or female, so it doesn't matter. But the dating market here where I live in is a little bit skewed. I happen to live in a very, I don't know if you want to say, opulent area. And based off living over that opulent area, there's a lot of hoity-toity type women around here. Hold on, guys, I'm going to turn this around. I forgot that I had the thing around there. There we go. So as a result of that, the dating market so far in this end of Connecticut is a lot different than this portion of Connecticut where I'm used to living. Now that doesn't mean anything necessarily. It just means that things are a little different. You get what I mean? It's one of the particular things that I thought would happen is released by, I don't know, by this time of this year, something would happen with that. It didn't happen. So I don't sit back and I don't cry and I don't whine about it. And you guys want to see the city a little bit? I don't sit back and cry and whine about it. I try to make something happen. So I go out, and in my travels, whether I'm in New York or wherever the hell I'm at, right now I'm here home in Connecticut. But well, I'm out or whatever the case may be. I always try to make it a thing to, say hello to a woman or whatever, because to be quite honest with you, I'm kind of rusty, you know what I mean? I was with a woman for 7 years, so I didn't necessarily know how to get back into the market, if you want to say, or whatever, after 7 years. It is what it is. But now that I'm getting back out there or whatever, I'm starting to see a trend with a lot of women. A lot of women just really are in this mindset of just sleep with me. I'm starting to see that. Now I don't mean that me personally myself. I can just tell by the conversation versus, hey, let's get into a relationship. Or it turns into a situation that almost identical to prostitution, if you want to say. If you got this many amount of dollars, we can do this, Lightweight prostitution, however you want to put it. And so I said, well, that's what I got to look for in the dating market. And listen, a lot of these bloggers, they want to sit back and they want to make the whole thing about race. Nah. This extends, listen, I've dated every type of woman you can think of damn near. This extends to black women, white women, Latin women, Jewish women, you name it. It extends to all women nowadays. It's a mentality. And this mentality has been trumped. Yeah, I said trumped. This mentality has been trumped and pushed by other women. So I said, well, what does that put me as a guy, single guy, slight bit older, in this dating market? And it's hard to imagine. Well, most of y'all can come to the conclusion, it leads you to nowhere. So I have my question. This is my question. One, I want to ask my audience, because I never get to ask you guys this question. Like I said, this is not a topic that I ever cover. It was of interest today, and I said, hey, let me try something different. I told you guys I was going to start talking about some different subjects, things I usually don't go into. As many of y'all know, because I was out of the music industry, most of the topics that I talk about either revolve around what's going on in the media or what's going on just in general in the music industry. Is that fair to say? And I say a bulk, about 75% of my uploads are that. Now, Between all the millions of views I get and all that stuff, I'm grateful for it. But sometimes I have to press issues like this because they need to be open. Now, the person that's an expertise with this, and I was just with them last night on their podcast. Shout out to Sean Prez. Shout out to Rich Dollars of Love and Hip Hop. I was just on Rich and Sean Prez's thing last night, and they were talking about the same thing, relationships, etc., etc., etc. There was only one difference. Because of the demographic that they cover, one of the pure problems that we have more so than anything is these women are older. So the majority of the women that I'm watching come on the show, most of them are around about, I would say about 50, shunting on up, late 50s, early 50s in some cases. And it's not their fault, this is just the demographic that they attract, you know what I mean? And I don't know why, because Rich is not that old in this press, but that's another story. So, give me 1 second, guys, we'll get out of this wind so y'all can hear me a little bit better. So when I listen to these women calling on this show, the one thing that I find interesting is not only are all these women by themselves, these women seemingly, hold on 1 second, guys, I'm gonna move over here so I can get out this wind. I'm moving and I'm shaking, so I had to go take care of some business today. But okay, this is a little bit better. Y'all can hear me a little bit better. So, yeah, the wind's blowing out here. I told you guys it's gotten cold, real cold out here, real quick. That's Connecticut for you. When I look at these women, they're on these shows and things like that or whatever, the first thing that comes to my mind is this is the template that a lot of women are following. Not only these women following this template, but they're also adhering to it 110%. Now, there's some studies that go out. Give me 1 second, guys. There's some studies that went out. I know I'm so hood. Lighting a cigarette doing a broadcast. Look at me and ask me if I can. Now, listen. This is the main thing with this whole thing. Ladies, there's some trajectories and some numbers out there by the year 2030. Half of the percentage of United States women will not only be alone, but they'll also be childless. Now, these are not my demographics. This is not what I came up with. This is not what I'm here to lure you into my conversation. I'm just telling you what the demographics say nationally. With that being said, where does that put a guy like me? Now, I'm in my early 40s. I don't make no contents about it or whatever. A chick meet me, I tell them, you know what I mean? The majority of the time that I attract women, it's usually between the ages of 28 through like 38, and highlight maybe 40, 41 at the oldest. That's the women that I attract. Now, I know this because every time I go out or I'm out somewhere, these are the women that come up to me, and I think, I don't know if it's God that's leading them to me or whatever, but I know one thing, I want a kid. So, and I'd love to have a family. That might be a reality for me. It might not be a reality for me. Who knows? I would hope that it would be a reality for me and many other men that I know that are that age. They hope it would be a reality for them too. But the one thing that's left out of the equation is this. A lot of women nowadays, especially Generation Z, a lot of these girls nowadays are going to have a preview of doing something that many generations of women before them didn't do. And that was utilize OnlyFans to become millionaires real quick. Now, if you got a chick that's a millionaire or half a millionaire, whatever the case may be, she ain't gonna find no wants for you. And most of these girls get this money within their 20s, where you as a guy, you're sitting back in your 20s and your 30s. I can speak for myself. My 20s, my 30s, I was working for a music company. So, you know, I can understand the trajectory of which these ladies are going. But most of these ladies, they make their money within a year, 2 years of being on OnlyFans, no? So, especially nowadays, it's even a little bit more rapid. Hell, Blue Nails got an OnlyFans now. Anybody can have an OnlyFans. Now, if you ask me why I brought that up, because that's something else I'm going to have to deal with. Do you know the probability of you running into a female nowadays that has an OnlyFans page or had an OnlyFans page? It's very high. At one time, you would have never thought it, but it's very high. So as I'm out here in this market and I'm meeting these women that are in this age range, this birthing age range, as I want to say, and many other men that are out there too. I have, I bring this up all the time. I have several friends of mine that don't have kids and they're around the same age I am, don't have families or nothing else. Now, the majority of men that spend their 20s and their 30s trying to make their money. I can identify with this. Like I said, I worked for a record company for over 17 years. In my 20s and 30s, I was at Bertelsmann Music Group, I was at Interscope, I was in Atlanta. I had fun doing it, made a lot of money, we had some good times. Now, it's not the same. It's nowhere the same. Now you got to belt first, get these women to somehow get on the bidding block with you and basically bid for them like you're the king Ben Hur and they're the royal court. Royal court of, whatever you want to call it. Some people would liken it to Mary Magdalene in 2022 and 2023. Now, there's going to be many women that get on here and they're not going to like what I have to say. They're going to say I'm obnoxious, I'm being a misandrist, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But in reality, you watch it every night. You follow some of these women. Now, the second thing I have to worry about is a newfound racist black and Latin women, which respectfully, it ain't all of you, but there's a whole bunch of them that are so acquiescent, involving themselves in being assimilated that they diss their own men. I've had enough examples of that. I mean, well, enough to be snappy enough and quick enough and smart enough to flip it around. But yeah, your old women hate you. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of instances where I have caught at least 14 to 15 women online talking about how that disdain is for men of color. These are women of color. They have black dads, Latin dads that are dark skinned. So that's another trivia I run into. The one for simulation and the fit in and the chasing of money has led many of these women to pick their job first before you. So that's another hazard I run into. The third one is, and that doesn't matter what my background is, it doesn't matter how many people I know in the music industry, it doesn't matter how many songs I released, or none of that stuff. These girls, they don't care about anything. So your background is not your teeter and want yous. Now it's what you currently doing. Now me currently, I'm doing my own thing outside of working for the music industry for over 17 freaking years, and I don't think I made out too bad. Most people hold the praise being a janitor or a ticket agent or, whatever you do, no offense. That's not my type of cup of tea. Ain't no money in that shit. All that you get to do is keep your fake dignity. Now, with all three of those things that I just mentioned up for grabs nowadays, there's men out here dating that are single, and many of you guys out here, you know what I'm talking about. I've seen you in the comment section saying I'm 35, I'm 37, I'm 38, I'm 40, 45, 49, whatever the case may be. You're saying the same thing. I don't have any kids. I don't have a family. I don't have this. By choice, many of these men, because they were chasing their careers in their 20s and 30s, where most women nowadays can hop on OnlyFans for 20 minutes and all of a sudden you got at least $2,000, $3,000 in your pocket. Am I lying? Am I exaggerating? I don't think so. So my question now is a man that's been now separated from his ex that he was with for 7 years, never fathered any children out of it, never got married or anything like that, even though I felt like I was married. Where do men like us go? Those men that are 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. Those guys that wasn't teen parents. Where do those guys go? One of the things that's prevalent in the black and Latin community is having children at a very young age, which is the biggest mistake you could ever make in your life. Trust me on that. I'm so glad I listened to my mom, pops, uncles. I can't think of one of my cousins, not one of them, that was a teen parent. Not one of them. And that's an honest to God truth. And I don't know if it's because of the background of our family, the military and everything like that. We grew up in a very poised environment as far as my mom's brothers and sisters. Every last one of them, except for one, all military people. So we grew up a little bit different, I guess, under certain rules as it applies when it comes to exactifying, let me see here, exactifying and defining what it means to be someone of significance in society. Does that sound right? Is that good enough? Now, my only problem is, as I'm moving forward, the one thing that I find out, and the whole reason I'm talking about this subject is, I notice a lot of times when a lot of these men state these things and these problems they have, particularly with a lot of women online, they get shamed when they start talking or consider going to date someone of another race, which the same thing doesn't fall fair when it comes to the women. When it's the women, they get applauded, they get a pat on the back, they get embraced, girl, you know it, you better go do you know, blah, 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 blah. When it's a man, how dare him go? And I won't praise his biracial children. I heard a woman say that the other day. I was appalled by it. I said, well, how do you feel about Serena Williams and her biracial child or any other biracial children? And I'm going to get into that conversation one day too, because there's a fraction of African American and Latin women that grin and smile with white women all day long, but it's secret and online with us. They talk about it. You know what I mean? And talk real reckless about these same women that they, in many ways, admonish. You know, I've been around every type of woman you can freaking think of. You know what I'm saying? I worked in the music industry. So you get a lot of girls who have video shoots, when we go to Miami, LA, you name it. And one thing I never found for my own self was this. I never saw any of those girls go outwardly and try to attack minority women. I never saw it. I never saw it. And I'm talking about the white women that I came in contact with. And yes, there was a lot of white women in music videos. I've dated a couple white women before. And I've never, in any of my relationships, I never had witnessed two things. One, I never bashed women of color while I was dating these women. Two, I never had any of these women come outwardly to me and bash women of color. But I guarantee you, many of you guys on here and many of you women have been through online and seen black women secretly within certain conversations and Latin women dissing white women. And I'm like, how are you dissing them? You want to be like them in a certain way when you go to work. And I'll tell you what I mean by you want to be like them. And I'm going to acknowledge who's right here. Star Pepper, what's going on? How you doing, Star Pepper? Shout. So just leaving the airport. Shout out to you. When you get these certain women online that do stuff like this or whatever, it's showing something different. It's showing not only are you kind of like wacko, but more importantly, it's showing that you go to work every freaking day and you got a hidden agenda in the back of your mind, and that doesn't conform to what you are facilitating and showing people. See, the personality that you're showing people is that you're all loving. You want people to all be together or whatever the case may be, and then when you get in private, or you get around certain groups, you all of a sudden want to be somebody else. Oh, I'm for the people. And when I heard this one the other day, like I said, I'm gonna put that little portion up and some other little clips up for you today. I'm back in the grind now. I had to get over this freaking cold and stuff I had. Sunday when I was out in New York, that's why I left. Now because I was getting lazy, I got what I want. I was sick. So, and I'll tell you an example of that and the story of that too, because it's becoming more and more apparent that a lot of women out here, and I say this because I got sisters too, a lot of women out here are starting to adhere to women that are losers, to be quite honest with you. You got women online nowadays that are 50 years old, 55 years old, 60 years old, going home to cats and dogs, and nobody to hug or squeeze them or talk to them or anything else, it don't matter. And they're telling younger women how they should facilitate their life and how they should navigate through life. And based off the demographics that's been provided lately, not only by Pew University, but also by the CDC, they are now predicting by the year 2030, which isn't far away, we're talking roughly 7 years, that 50% of the women in America that are currently standing will be, in effect, basically by themselves. 50% of the United States population. Now, I've talked about this before, and I said, I don't really do conspiracy theories or anything like this, but I will say this. If there was ever an agenda to do some type of, and the reason I highlight this is because I said this last week, and then we got this information this week. The world's population has just now reached 8 billion. 8 billion. Now, the world's resources and the population don't match, all right? They don't match, meaning that we're consuming more as a society internationally. We're consuming more as we're populating the world more. If we're populating the world more and we're consuming more, resources sooner or later can refurbish themselves, and then after a certain amount of time, what happens is resources can refurbish themselves, especially when we're talking about food, things like that. Well, then you start getting a problem. So I'm going to tell you what I mean here. With that announcement that the population has now reached 8 billion internationally, if there was ever some type of conspiracy theory about world population and slowing it down, blah, 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 this would be it. What it would be is you and I as genders arguing with each other and walking further and further away and picking career over relationship and family. Henceforth, that same amount of women that they're predicting by 2030, which is at 50%, that will be by themselves. And that's the population control. Now, a lot of plans that come from the government, a lot of plans that come from, people that are insiders or whatever you want to say. A lot of information that comes from them and a lot of things they facilitate out to the public. Like I said, my family was military. A lot of things they facilitate, you don't necessarily see them coming. You understand what I mean? Meaning that, like, they're not right in front of your face. You won't even know that they're being put up upon you and sprouted upon you. And this is one of them. So, ladies, I'll say this. If you're like you say you're online, and you're so much against the government conspiracies, and the government is against this woman and that woman or whatever, you are falling for one of the biggest tricks ever in the book. And sadly enough, the men understand it of all nationalities, but for some reason or another, the women don't get it. They think this is a escape point, and this is some type of ploy that only happens once in a lifetime, where you can go after every individual goal that you wanted to. And I say right now, in the society the way it is, women have more facility to things than anything. I would even go as far as to say more facility towards things than men do. As men, you have to be careful of how you approach women nowadays, which is one of the issues. I can get to talking to a woman and have a great conversation with her. And within 5 to 10 minutes, when she's tired of dealing with me and tired of talking to me, she will not only walk off, but she will forget totally about me. And this goes for a lot of men. Doesn't matter what nationality y'all, what background y'all, whatever the case may be. You got a lot of men out here that think they make it $40,000, $50,000 a year. I've been around millionaires. That's who I work for. I work for multi-millionaires. I've been around every car you can think of, every nice hotel you can think of, whatever. And I've got enough pictures and video to prove it, so, and which are available right here on this page, so I don't have to do that. I'm real versed as far as like women are concerned, real versed as far as travel is concerned, real versed as far as being around multiple different ethnicities. It's sad to me because these same women, when we fast forward 7 years from now, those numbers are true. They hold up to be true, rather. Then what does that mean for the Black and Latin population? It means that you reduce yourself within it. That's what it means. So the more the harboring and the arguing and the back and forth and whatever, not only leaves me out in the clear dry to never have any kids, but it leaves a lot of you women out in the clear dry in the future not to have any kids either. And even though we're having fun with these arguments, these silly arguments that we have online, I've had them here, Fresh and Fit, they definitely get their batch of them, many other bloggers and males. Regardless of the arguments that we have here as far as gender is concerned, amongst both have credible arguments. Men have credible arguments, the women have some credible arguments. I get where the women are coming from, and even though it's partially a lot of your faults, you have this lust for pookie types. And you go after these pookies, and Latin women have a culture too. A lot of your men are in jail. I know, I'm having both of us. I know. And a lot of white men too. One of my best friends, he was white. He got locked up for child support for 2 years. You know what I mean? It's not a spectrum of color or culture on this subject that I'm talking about. It really isn't. The mentality that a lot of women have nowadays, I understand they're not respected because a lot of these women have been duped over by cookie types. The dude that wants to sleep on your couch for 3-4 years, eat up kids' cereal, shit like that. I understand, ladies. And a lot of you men have been duped by women that want to sit with you, and then when the cash cow runs out or something happens to you or whatever the case may be, they've already had something in plan already and they got a new man. I've seen that enough times. So both ends of the spectrum have a valid argument. I don't want to, erase anybody's argument or erase anybody's, feelings or emotions or whatever, because like I said, both of them are validated. I will not lie about that, both male and female. I just think that the continuing argument amongst agendas, online and offline. It's going to lead to nothing but confusion. And the numbers and the demographics that are projected by the CDC by 2030 saying that 15% of women in the United States will be alone with a cat, dog by 2030 is kind of scary. So like I said, this is outside the topics that I usually talk about. I usually don't talk about stuff like this. I stay familiar with what I know, which is the music industry. But I said, you know what, I'm going to make a segue and talk about something else. And this is all from being on last night on Instagram with my ex-boss, Sean Press. Shout out to him. Rich Dollars, shout out to him from Love and Hip Hop. And they kind of carry this premise of relationships and things like that or whatever. But it's more teetered towards, because of their age demographic, it's more teetered towards and who they usually have calling in more. It's usually older, you know? So I want to talk about, you know, the demographic that I'm more dealing with as far as dating, which is the spectrum between like 28 to 30, you know? And realistically, if I plan on having a kid, I don't want to have a child with a woman that's over, let's say, 40, 41 years old. It's dangerous at that point, you know? And a lot of y'all know that. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I think I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about it once I get in the house, because it's getting cold out here. Hey, just got off work, watch you on ride home. What's going on? Ain't nothing, man. I'm out here. I had to do some moving and skating today, a lot of it. So I'm kind of a little tired. I need to get something to eat in me, and it is extremely cold out here. Last week it was almost 70-something degrees, and now this week it's like it's going to be 40-something the whole week. So this is a good old New England winter for you. We knew it was coming. Glad I'm not on the shoreline right now, but that's one of the best things about here. You know, here in Connecticut, if you get used to the cold, you get used to the cold, you get used to it quick. You know, we live by this. But on the shoreline, where I used to be at, you're talking about 10 to 15 degrees colder than what it is right here. You better believe that. And the colder it gets, the worse it gets. I used to live right across the street from the beach there. And so, like, you're talking about 10. Anybody who lives in New England, you know what I'm talking about. Long Island, Staten Island, you know what I'm talking about too. So I ain't got to explain that too much if you live here in the Northeast. But ladies, I will say this, in ending this, and I'm going to continue this conversation once I get home, because I'm heading home. It's cold out here. Ladies, you are being fooled, all right? And you're being fooled by the same system that you're speaking against or whatever, and it's a setup. And if it was any bigger setup in the world or whatever, and I'm talking about all ladies. I'm not talking about just black women, Latin women. I'm talking about white women, whatever women. You're being set up. And if I had to make a guess and I had to say something, I would say this is part of the real population control. Because if they're able to project that 50% of women in the United States, and I'm going to say more so, maybe 42, 43% of women in the United States that belong to Generation X, that belong to the millennials, that belong to Gen Z. I'm not talking about the baby boomers. I'm not talking about the baby boomers. I actually think there's going to be a time in history coming soon where, and I'd say maybe in the next 3 to 4 years, I think they're going to see something as the baby boom generation exits out, because they're not the marriage generation anymore. They're not the generation that's giving kids or whatever. Even if you're talking about the youngest of Gen Xers, even if you're talking about the youngest of Gen Xers, which would be like in the scope of maybe 42 to 43 years old, those guys are still having children, you know? So we're not talking about the generation that's like 50 plus. You know, I'm talking about like 57 plus years old or something like that. We're talking about the current generation. And what I think is going to happen is, as they're more and more aging out, the baby boom generation, which is the youngest of their generation, I think now is like about 57, 58. What you're going to see is, you're going to see a moment where all three generations, Generation X, the millennials, and Generation Z, they all come together and they kind of like set the stimulant for the next 10, 20, 30 years in history. I guarantee you, what they're going to do is they're going to help facilitate and usher out once what you would call the baby boom generation. I think that's where we're at now. I think you'll see more of it sooner than later. Let me put it that way. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'm going to get home. It's kind of windy, so I'm going to take my butt up here and get up this hill. But what I wanted to tell you guys was, let me set you guys see Connecticut real quick. I'm right now, this is, believe it or not, this is WWE headquarters. Let me move over here so you guys can see it a little bit better. This is WWE World Wrestling Federation headquarters right here in my home of Connecticut. It's a huge building. I wanted to show you guys that real quick. I'll probably stay with you for a few more minutes. I'm getting ready to head in. It got real cold up here. But Ladies, I just want to say, and I just want to ask a question. One, what type of girl do you see me with? Two, the second question I got is, what type of woman and age range do you see me with? And then I think the third question I got is this. How many kids do you think I should try to have? I want to go for at least 2 or 3, back to back to back to back to back. You know what I mean? So guys, yeah, it was supposed to snow and it turned into rain here and that. Yeah, it was supposed to snow. Instead, it just turned into rain. It just rained a lot. That's all it did here. It didn't do anything. But trust me, it's coming. It's definitely coming in a minute. It's like I said, when it starts snowing here in Connecticut, it starts snowing. And then the thing about it is, it'll snow on top of it, and then it'll snow again, then it'll snow again. So that's how we get it here. And like I said, on the shoreline, it's worse. We used to get it worse than this. So actually, being in the city versus being on the shoreline now is a hell of a difference as far as that's concerned, and the wintertime is concerned. So that's a good thing. That's actually a good thing. We'll go over here for a second. So I want to reiterate that question one more time. What type of woman do you see me with? I'm kind of rough around the edges, I ain't gonna lie. I curse a lot. Sometimes I get mad. You know, it is who I am. All right, guys, I will talk to y'all in a minute. I'm gonna get home. I'm gonna hop on the freaking listening here and get home or whatever. So I will talk to you guys in the next, hour or so. I'm gonna give you something to eat, all right? Thanks for tuning in. Answer those questions for me in the comments section. Let me know what you think.